I feel like I was spitted out of a tornado. It's been a hell of a year. I'm so happy and grateful for this year that I had.
How does a former Miss Israel and combat trainer become Hollywood's most unforgettable Wonder Woman? Gal Gadot's rise is packed with choices that broke expectations and moments that nearly broke her. From turning down Bond to surviving a hidden health scare while pregnant, this script uncovers the bold steps behind her transformation. What role changed everything? What nearly ended it all? And where is she headed next? Gal Gadot was born on 30th April 1985 in Petah Tikva, Israel, and raised in the nearby city of Rosh Hashanah. Her upbringing was grounded in a disciplined, family-oriented environment. Her mother was a physical education teacher, and her father worked as an engineer. Her family carried deep cultural roots, and her maternal grandparents were Holocaust survivors, which gave her a strong sense of heritage and resilience. From early on, Gal's life was shaped by movement, structure, and a strong connection to her Israeli identity. Growing up, she was naturally athletic and spent her free time playing basketball, tennis, and volleyball. But it wasn't all about sports. She also had a passion for dance. She trained in styles like ballet, jazz, and hip-hop, developing a deep love for movement and self-expression. For a while, she even considered becoming a choreographer. Her early years were a mix of physical energy and artistic curiosity, and those foundations would later play a huge role in how she carried herself on screen. Her name, Gal, means wave, and Gadot translates to riverbank in Hebrew, fitting for someone who would eventually move so fluidly through multiple worlds. When she turned 18, her life took a turn she hadn't planned. A talent scout encouraged her to enter the Miss Israel pageant in 2004. Gal didn't take the competition too seriously and didn't expect to win. But to her surprise, she did. Becoming Miss Israel at such a young age was both overwhelming and eye-opening. She was then sent to represent Israel in the Miss Universe pageant later that year. Not wanting to take the pageant circuit any further, she admitted to intentionally underperforming, showing up late, skipping makeup, and avoiding the usual glamour to avoid winning again. Though she hadn't planned for a career in the spotlight, the exposure led to a wave of modeling opportunities. Brands began calling, and soon she was doing campaigns, photo shoots, and magazine features. The modeling world gave her professional experience, financial independence, and confidence in front of the camera. But despite the early success, she didn't immediately chase fame. In fact, she enrolled in university to study law and international relations, possibly imagining a career in something more stable or traditional. Then came the mandatory chapter in every Israeli citizen's life: military service. Gal joined the Israel Defense Forces at age 20 and served for 2 years as a combat fitness instructor. That experience became a formative one. The physical demands, strict schedule, and leadership responsibilities helped her develop discipline and focus. She's often credited her military background for preparing her mentally and physically for the demanding roles that would come later in her career. Even during her service, the camera never strayed too far. In 2007, she was featured in a magazine photo spread about women in the Israeli army, further increasing her visibility. After completing her service and briefly returning to civilian life, Gal's path began to shift more directly toward entertainment. Around 2007, she landed her first acting role in an Israeli television series called U-Boat. The show didn't last long, but it gave her a taste of scripted performance and working on set. At the same time, she was offered the chance to audition for a role in the James Bond film Quantum of Solace. While she didn't land the part, the audition made an impression. It opened doors and placed her on the radar of casting directors beyond Israel. That brief encounter with the Bond franchise wasn't the end of the story. Just a couple of years later, the same casting director reached out again, this time with a different opportunity. The role was for Giselle Yashar in the film Fast and Furious, part of a global action franchise. Gal was hesitant at first. She was still considering a future in law and wasn't sure if acting was the right path. But ultimately, she decided to take the chance. She traveled to the United States, auditioned, and landed the role. Her casting in Fast and Furious in 2009 marked the beginning of her international acting career. What set her apart was more than just her looks. She brought a grounded, confident presence to the screen and performed many of her own stunts, drawing from her military background. Her character became a fan favorite, and she reprised the role in future sequels. It was clear that Gal Gadot had something special. She wasn't just fitting into the Hollywood mold, she was expanding it. While her career was taking off, her personal life was also moving forward. In the mid-2000s, she met Israeli real estate developer Yaron Varsano at a gathering in the desert. The event wasn't their usual scene. It involved yoga, wellness, and energy cleansing, but the two connected instantly. Yaron made it clear early on that he was serious. On their second date, he told Gal that he intended to propose within 2 years. True to his word, they got married in 2008. Gal has often spoken about the importance of her relationship with Yaron, crediting him with being a steady force through all the transitions in her life. While she was navigating new scripts, red carpets, and long flights, she had someone who understood the importance of staying grounded. In 2011, they welcomed their first daughter, Alma, into the world. Becoming a mother was a turning point. It added another layer to her identity. No longer just a rising star, she was also someone's parent, navigating the balance between professional ambition and personal responsibility. As her role in Fast and Furious continued through sequels like Fast 5 and Fast and Furious 6, Gal's confidence in acting grew. The franchise helped her build global recognition, but more importantly, it gave her experience working with major directors, producers, and co-stars in high-stakes productions. By the early 2010s, she had carved out a niche as a legitimate action presence. She had the look, the skills, and now the resume to prove she could handle more. What no one knew at the time was that her biggest transformation, her defining role, was just around the corner. Landing the role of Giselle in Fast and Furious was more than just Gal Gadot's Hollywood debut. It was the first time she saw herself on the global stage. The character wasn't front and center, but Gal's cool, composed energy made her stand out. She wasn't trying to steal scenes with over-the-top acting. Instead, she let her physicality and presence do the work. She performed many of her own stunts, something that not only impressed fans, but also directors and producers who saw potential in her as more than just a supporting player. Her return in Fast 5 and later in Fast and Furious 6 helped solidify her reputation as an action actress who could hold her own. She worked alongside some of the genre's biggest names and continued to expand her range, developing more confidence with each project. But she didn't allow success to pull her too far from her roots. Gal remained grounded, traveling between the United States and Israel frequently, maintaining her home life with Yaron and their daughter Alma. Balancing a growing career and a young family wasn't easy, but she was deliberate about her choices. She turned down roles that didn't feel right, stayed focused on projects that excited her, and leaned on her husband for support. By the early 2010s, she had already accomplished what many would consider a dream: an international acting career, a stable personal life, and the admiration of fans worldwide. But the turning point, the moment when everything changed, came in 2013. That year, Gal received a call to audition for a secret role in a major Warner Brothers production. The details were vague, and she was told very little during the initial stages. It wasn't until later that she learned she was being considered for the role of Diana Prince, better known as Wonder Woman. The idea of portraying one of the most iconic superheroes of all time came as a surprise to her. She hadn't grown up with the character the way audiences in other parts of the world had, but once she understood the gravity of the role, she approached it with a sense of responsibility. Her casting was officially announced in late 2013, and the reaction was immediate. Some fans were thrilled, others were skeptical. Gal, by then still largely known for her work in ensemble action films, didn't fit the traditional image of Wonder Woman for everyone. Critics pointed to her body type, her relatively limited screen time in past films, and questioned whether she had the acting range for such a layered character. But Gal didn't let the backlash distract her. Instead, she focused on preparation. To step into the role of Diana Prince, Gal underwent months of intensive physical training. She gained 17 pounds of muscle and trained in multiple disciplines, including swordsmanship, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, kickboxing, and horseback riding. It wasn't just about looking the part. She wanted to feel the strength and capability that the role demanded. She later shared in interviews that the physical preparation was as intense, if not more so, than the actual filming. Her first appearance as Wonder Woman came in Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, released in 2016. Though the film itself had mixed reviews, Gal's performance was one of its most praised elements. In just a few scenes, she managed to introduce a character that had both power and mystery, stealing focus from even the film's title characters. Suddenly, the skepticism began to fade. Audiences saw something new in her, a sense of purpose and elegance wrapped in steel. It was clear that this version of Wonder Woman was different, and Gal Gadot was the reason why. The success of that appearance laid the foundation for a solo film. When Wonder Woman was released in June of 2017, it didn't just do well. It exceeded expectations across the board. The film earned more than $101 million in the United States during its opening weekend, becoming the highest-grossing debut for a film directed by a woman at the time. Critics praised its story, its heart, and Gal's nuanced performance. She wasn't just a superhero, she was a leader, a symbol of strength and compassion. For Gal, this role wasn't just another job. She took on the responsibility of playing Wonder Woman with pride and care. In interviews, she spoke often about the importance of showing that power and kindness can exist in the same character. She wanted young girls to see someone on screen who was strong, not just physically, but emotionally and morally too. Her portrayal of Diana Prince struck a chord with audiences around the world. She had transformed from a supporting actress in a car chase franchise to the face of one of the most important cultural milestones in modern cinema. While the film was breaking records and receiving praise, Gal's personal life was also expanding. Just a few months before Wonder Woman hit theaters, she welcomed her second daughter, Maya, in March of 2017. She filmed parts of the movie while pregnant, which became a talking point in the media and among fans. Her ability to balance such a demanding production schedule while growing her family became another reason people admired her. She wasn't just playing a superhero, she was living the reality of one. Following the success of Wonder Woman, Gal quickly became one of the most in-demand actresses in Hollywood. She was seen as more than just a box office draw. She represented a shift in how female leads were being written, cast, and celebrated. Directors and producers began approaching her with new types of roles, ones that required leadership, intensity, and emotional depth. But despite the rising fame, she kept her priorities clear. She continued to split her time between film sets and home life, often sharing glimpses of her everyday routine through interviews and public appearances. She talked about helping her kids get ready for school, about taking walks with her husband, and about being present with her family when she wasn't working. Fame hadn't changed her values, it had simply widened her audience. What stood out most during this period was how naturally Gal stepped into her new role as a public figure. She wasn't just an actress promoting a film. She became a voice for representation, for strength, and for self-belief. Her transformation wasn't only about going from model to actress, or from Israel to Hollywood. It was about becoming a figure people looked up to for more than just her roles. She embodied a kind of modern heroism, quiet, steady, and authentic. Following the success of Wonder Woman in 2017, Gal Gadot found herself propelled to a new level of global stardom. She had gone from being a supporting character in a car chase franchise to one of the most recognizable faces in the world. The film's impact went beyond box office numbers. It was praised for its direction, tone, and most of all, for Gal's portrayal of a hero who was not only strong, but also compassionate and grounded. It became clear that she had captured something special, an image of a superhero that felt human and powerful at the same time. Gal embraced this new chapter with the same level of dedication she had shown throughout her journey. She continued to appear as Diana Prince in subsequent films, including Justice League, released later in 2017. Although the theatrical release of the film received mixed reactions, Gal's performance was consistently noted as one of its highlights. She brought sincerity and emotional depth to the role, even when the film's storylines were under scrutiny. Her ability to remain authentic amid large-scale productions became a defining feature of her screen presence. Behind the scenes, her life was just as full. She continued raising her two daughters with her husband Yaron, often mentioning in interviews how motherhood remained her most important role. Despite her demanding schedule, she focused on maintaining balance, something she credited to her strong support system and a clear sense of priorities. She chose her projects carefully, only committing to those that aligned with her values or excited her creatively. As her influence in Hollywood grew, so did her interest in shaping stories behind the camera. In 2019, Gal and Yaron launched their own production company, Pilot Wave. Their goal was to create films and series that spotlight strong, complex characters, especially women, who drive their own narratives. This move was both strategic and personal. Gal wasn't content with just being the face of powerful characters. She wanted to take part in telling those stories from the ground up. Her next major appearance came in the 2020 film Wonder Woman 1984, a sequel set decades after the original. Though the film faced distribution challenges due to the global pandemic and received a more mixed critical response, Gal's performance was once again praised. She brought vulnerability and growth to the character, portraying Diana Prince as more reflective and emotionally mature. The release was unique, as it premiered both in cinemas and on a streaming platform, a first for a film of its scale. At the same time, Gal continued to explore different roles that challenged her image as just a superhero actress. In 2021, she starred in the action comedy Red Notice alongside Dwayne Johnson and Ryan Reynolds. The film quickly became one of the most watched Netflix originals, proving that her appeal extended well beyond comic book fans. In Red Notice, she played a sly and unpredictable art thief, using humor and charm as much as physicality to stand out. It was a shift in tone, but still played to her strengths: presence, timing, and authenticity. This period also marked a shift in how Gal was perceived, not just as an actress, but as a cultural figure. She had become a spokesperson for a new kind of strength, one that included grace, intelligence, and vulnerability. She was regularly invited to speak at panels and interviews about representation, women in film, and balancing work with personal life. Her perspective was often refreshing. Rather than projecting an image of perfection, she acknowledged the challenges and contradictions of her public and private roles. Even as her career evolved, she never fully stepped away from her identity. She continued to be an outspoken advocate for Israeli culture, while also supporting international causes related to children's health, education, and gender equality. Her interviews remained grounded. She spoke about her children, the lessons she hoped to pass on to them, and how her own upbringing in Israel continued to shape her values. In 2022, Gal took on the role of Lynette Ridgway Doyle in the film adaptation of Death on the Nile. Based on the Agatha Christie novel and directed by Kenneth Branagh, the film allowed her to show a different side of her acting. It was a dramatic role, rooted in mystery and emotion, and she played it with poise. Though the film had its share of production delays and controversies around some of its cast members, Gal's performance was recognized for bringing elegance and gravity to the screen. All the while, she remained active as a producer. Pilot Wave took on multiple projects, including a historical thriller about World War II hero Irina Sendler. The idea of telling true stories about real women who demonstrated bravery and moral clarity appealed to Gal deeply. She often mentioned how drawn she was to characters who used their strength not for dominance, but for protection and change. Her choices reflected that principle across both acting and producing. Throughout these years, Gal continued to demonstrate a kind of quiet control over her career path. She didn't chase trends or follow the expected Hollywood route. Instead, she carved a space for herself that allowed her to grow professionally while staying rooted in her own values. She turned down roles that didn't feel right, waited for scripts that offered depth, and leaned into opportunities that gave her creative ownership. By the time she entered the next phase of her career, it was clear she was no longer just a star tied to a single franchise. She had become someone who could carry a story, shape it from the ground up, and deliver it to audiences across the world with clarity and purpose. And even though she had already reached incredible heights, Gal Gadot's transformation was far from complete. She was still evolving, still pushing herself in new directions, and still finding ways to surprise the very industry that once didn't know what to do with her. With her reputation firmly established in Hollywood, Gal Gadot continued to expand her presence not just as an actress, but as a producer and businesswoman. She was no longer just part of a project, she was helping shape them. As pilot wave motion pictures gained momentum, Gal began taking on stories that aligned closely with her personal values and artistic vision. Her focus was clear: strong, multi-dimensional women at the heart of stories that mattered. One of her first significant steps in that direction was her continued involvement with Netflix. Following the massive success of Red Notice in 2021, where she played the elusive and witty Bishop, Netflix quickly saw her potential beyond acting. This led to her next major project with the streaming platform, Heart of Stone. Unlike Red Notice, which had a comedic tone, Heart of Stone was more grounded, aiming to be a serious spy thriller in the vein of traditional espionage cinema. Gal not only starred in it, but also took on an executive producer role, adding another layer of control and responsibility to her creative involvement. Heart of Stone was released in 2023, and while reviews were mixed, audiences appreciated seeing her in a new type of role. She portrayed an intelligence operative trying to maintain global peace while navigating internal betrayals and power struggles. Though the film didn't achieve the same critical acclaim as Wonder Woman, it reinforced her versatility and continued her transition into more complex characters. The dual role of lead actress and producer allowed her to bring a personal touch to the storytelling and also helped her refine her vision for future projects. By this point, Gal was balancing multiple identities: mother, actor, producer, and public figure. In her interviews, she often returned to the importance of staying grounded. She spoke openly about the challenges of maintaining balance, sharing how she prioritized quality time with her children and made conscious choices about which scripts to accept. She was not interested in being everywhere at once. Instead, she focused on the kind of legacy she wanted to build, one based on thoughtful choices and meaningful impact. Outside of work, Gal continued to serve as a representative for several global brands. Her partnership with high-end names like Tiffany & Co. and Gucci reflected her status as a style icon. Yet even in the world of fashion and luxury, she maintained a sense of authenticity. Her public appearances were elegant but rarely flashy, and she often used her platform to highlight broader issues, such as mental health, body positivity, and the importance of self-acceptance. In addition to her commercial ventures, she also began work on the upcoming live-action adaptation of Disney's Snow White. Cast as the evil queen, Gal embraced the opportunity to explore a darker, theatrical character, something far removed from the heroic personas she had become known for. Filming wrapped in 2022, and the film is set for release in 2025. Her decision to play a villain surprised many, but also showcased her willingness to explore roles that challenged audience expectations. It marked another moment of transformation, where she stepped away from safe territory and embraced creative risks. As her career evolved, questions naturally arose about the future of Wonder Woman. After the success of the first film and the sequel, expectations for a third installment were high. Gal remained vocal about her love for the character and her interest in reprising the role. However, the direction of the DC Extended Universe began to shift following changes in leadership and creative vision at Warner Brothers. As of 2024, official updates indicated that the third film would not move forward under the current plans. It was a disappointment to fans, but Gal handled the development with characteristic grace. She acknowledged the uncertainty while expressing gratitude for the opportunity to have played such an iconic role. Away from the spotlight, Gal and her husband continued to grow their family. In early 2024, she gave birth to their fourth daughter, Ori. The announcement came as a surprise to many, as Gal had kept the pregnancy largely private. What few knew at the time was that her pregnancy had come with significant complications. In the final trimester, she was diagnosed with a blood clot in her brain, a condition that required urgent medical intervention. She later revealed in an interview that it was one of the most frightening experiences of her life. Fortunately, the surgery was successful, and both she and the baby made a full recovery. Her openness about the experience resonated with many. It reminded fans that behind the polished public image, was a woman who had faced real and serious health challenges. Gal chose to speak about the ordeal not for sympathy, but to encourage awareness around maternal health and the importance of medical attention during pregnancy. It was another instance of her using her platform to elevate important issues, quietly, without spectacle, and with sincere intent. In the months that followed, she eased back into work with a new sense of purpose. She continued to develop scripts through Pilot Wave and remained committed to telling stories that highlighted resilience and human connection. While big studio roles remained a part of her life, she was equally invested in independent projects and documentaries that explored historical and social themes. Her ability to navigate both mainstream and meaningful cinema gave her a unique position in the industry, one that few others managed to maintain. Through all of this, Gal remained consistent in how she carried herself. Whether she was on a red carpet, on a film set, or at home with her family, she never lost the quiet strength that defined her. Her transformation over the years wasn't just physical or professional, it was personal. She grew into someone who understood the weight of influence, but didn't let it distort her values. She evolved, not by reinventing herself, but by deepening the qualities that had been there from the beginning: discipline, empathy, and clarity of purpose. Even after years in the global spotlight, Gal Gadot has continued to evolve in ways that feel both natural and intentional. Her transformation has never relied on reinvention, but rather on quiet, steady growth. Following her health scare during the pregnancy of her fourth daughter, she returned to work with renewed perspective, approaching projects with deeper thoughtfulness and a stronger sense of purpose. While many stars chase momentum, Gal seemed more interested in maintaining balance and pursuing stories that aligned with who she had become. Her production company, Pilot Wave, remained a central part of that evolution. In addition to major studio collaborations, Gal continued developing more personal and meaningful projects, films based on historical events, female pioneers, and unsung heroes. One of the projects she actively worked on was a biopic about Irina Sendler, a Polish social worker who helped rescue thousands of Jewish children during World War II. Gal was both attached to star in the lead role and serve as producer. This project wasn't just another film. It reflected her deep personal connection to stories of resilience and survival, particularly those linked to her family's Holocaust heritage. Although she had taken a step back from high-profile promotional circuits for a while after giving birth to Ori, her fourth daughter, she gradually re-entered the public space by mid-2024. Her first appearances were less about glamour and more about substance. She spoke openly in interviews about the complications during her pregnancy, including the discovery of multiple blood clots and the emergency surgery that followed. Her honesty was striking. Rather than focusing on the fear or trauma of the event, she shifted the spotlight to the importance of listening to one's body and not dismissing symptoms, especially during pregnancy. Her interviews during this period often included her signature blend of warmth and composure. She talked about the realities of parenting 4 daughters, the unpredictability of life, and the value of health above all else. These conversations weren't about maintaining celebrity status. They were about sharing what mattered. She mentioned how the experience had reminded her to slow down, to be selective, and to say no to things that didn't serve her or her family's well-being. Despite these personal shifts, Gal's place in the film industry remained strong. Even without a third Wonder Woman confirmed, her role in shaping modern superhero cinema had already been secured. Directors and fans alike continued to reference her portrayal of Diana Prince as one of the most sincere and grounded interpretations of a comic book character in recent years. Whether she returned to the role or not, it was clear her legacy in that space would remain. In late 2024, promotional campaigns began ramping up for her next big screen appearance, as the Evil Queen in Disney's live-action adaptation of Snow White. Though the film had wrapped filming back in 2022, its release was delayed due to scheduling changes and post-production work. Now set for release in March 2025, Snow White marked Gal's first full leap into playing a full-fledged villain. From early glimpses released by the studio, her performance appeared to be theatrical, dramatic, and filled with charisma, something completely different from the quiet strength of her superhero roles. Her decision to take on such a contrasting character reinforced a long-running theme in her career: range without losing identity. She has managed to stretch creatively without chasing trends or changing for the sake of novelty. Even as she stepped into darker roles, the same principles seem to guide her: intention, preparation, and sincerity. At this point in her journey, Gal Gadot's transformation can't be defined by a single role, moment, or project. It's the result of years spent making deliberate choices, of knowing when to step forward and when to pause, and of allowing personal growth to guide professional decisions. Her story, still unfolding, continues to resonate not because she has stayed in the spotlight, but because she has never allowed it to define her. With that, we have reached the end of today's video. If you have come this far with us, be sure to check out other videos on the channel.